Hiding just off screen.
Okay.
Hello and welcome to the Aten Inquisition, where we spend a little bit of time getting to know the populace of the Kingdom of Aytonvelt. We're your hosts, Morgan and Elizabeth, King and Queen during the never-ending plague. Our guests tonight are Ivan and Yanka. Your Graces, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, everybody. Want to go first here? No, apparently I'm being pointed at. So I'm Ivan. I like to make things. I like to wear armor. I like to hit guys with sticks. I like to have a good time. Kind of a jack of all trades. I've been in the SCA for 28 years now.
Going on 29.
Yeah, going on 29. And it's been fun this whole time. I got into it because I saw a guy walking out of my dorm with a bag of armor that clanked and a helmet on a stick, and made the mistake of asking him what he was doing. He said, I'm going to go put on armor and hit guys with a stick. How do you sign me up? I'm in. Came back the next year and never looked back.
And I'm Yanka, wife to this one. Modernly, I'm an engineer, but in the SCA, I kind of do a lot of everything. I'm a scribe, currently deputy scribe. I've been kingdom scribe. I've been baronial seneschal a couple of times. We were B&B. Been deputy seneschal. Just all around, like to do service, like to do art. Got an apprentice who keeps me on task for, especially during the plague of, hey, let's go do some art, or what are you working on, even if it's not SCA related. So it's kind of us right now.
All right, well, welcome.
So, well, we heard how His Grace found the SCA. How did you find it?
Oh goodness. So I was in high school and the guy I was dating knew a guy who worked at the Army Navy store, who was this big burly guy with the big long beard and the leather vest, and he was carrying a gun in his back, and he was kind of gruff, and he's like, I do this thing where I hit guys with sticks. And I'm like, that sounds kind of cool. And my boyfriend thought that was kind of cool, and we got one of our other friends to go with us, and we went off to our first event, which was this event called Armageddon. And it was at a state park local to my stomping grounds, and met a bunch of people, had a really good time, thought this was really neat, went to a couple of fighter practices, stopped dating the guy, and I've been in for 29 years now. So it's been, basically I was an officer when I was in high school, back when you didn't have to be 18 to be an officer. I was our local chatelaine, which is when I met him. And it was kind of a fight for me to be in the SCA, because my mom got unfortunately convinced that the SCA was not a good place to be because there's this Dungeons and Dragons thing. And her therapist was part of the Satanic Panic people. And really what it was is the college kids of the group up at the college in Brookings, South Dakota, played D&D on Friday nights when they weren't, as you do when you're in college.
Right.
In the Dakotas when it's cold.
90% of the year.
Yeah. So it took my shire and my friend Dave with the big burly beard, who on the weekends when he wasn't doing SCA sung gospel with his family, to convince my mom that, no, this is really cool. These are a lot of good people. We have a good time. We're not anything doing untoward to your daughter. We're just here to go spend the Sundays at the library doing research and working on crafts in the community room. Mm-hmm. It was kind of my mom thought it was weird. She still thinks it's kind of weird, but she's been to a couple of events now, and she's like, okay, I understand why you guys do this. So it took a while for that to fight happen, though. But by the time I graduated and went to college, she's like, oh, okay, you can have fun, but studies first. So.
Fair.
Solid.
Mm-hmm. So then you started in North Shield. Did you both start there?
Yep. And
have you played anywhere else?
So at that point, North Shield was a principality of the Mid-Realm.
Yep.
So I moved into Illinois for work, for internships. So I was running around with all of the Midlands crew, going to war practices every weekend during the summers, and training with the Midlands Army for Penzic. And I didn't get to go to Penzic for like another 10 years. But that's where I was at. And then you were always in.
I was always in North Shield.
Yep.
When it was well, technically, I was there before it was a principality. One of my early events, I think it was the second or third event I went to, was the founding of the Principality of North Shield.
Wow.
So, yeah, went there. It was His Majesty Finn at the time,
Yep.
and created the Principality while I was there. I had no idea what event I was going to. Like, hey, there's this thing going on in Sioux Falls, which is like 500 miles away, which was about as close as anything got.
Wow.
No lie, we were in Rapid City, and the next closest group was at that point. What was that?
In Kingdom would have been on.
I'm trying to remember. It wasn't Sioux
It would
Falls.
have been Pier,
It would have been Pier.
or Madison,
Yeah, which was still like 3 hours away, 3.5 hours away.
and a time change.
Yeah. So
we really are kind of spoiled here in Aytonvelt. Like when I hear other people talking about how far they have to travel for events, I'm like,
when we first moved here, everybody was like, "Oh, it's a day event up in Phoenix. That's too far. I don't want to go." I'm like, it's like 2 hours. That's an easy day
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah,
Anything
Good car.
go.
anything under 4 is great. Now as we've gotten older and have a kid, I'm like, okay, 4 hours for a day trip is pushing it unless we've got alternate drivers. But when we were in our 20s,
Easy.
yeah,
Easy
easy.
to do. But again, I remember traveling 14 hours one way to a one-day event.
Yep.
Like that's just what you did.
Fight all day,
Yeah.
have feast in the evening with court. There we go.
Yep. And,
Wow.
yeah, we went from Rapid City, South Dakota, all the way across the Dakotas into Madison, Wisconsin.
Yep.
For a what was it?
Tournament of Chivalry.
nice.
Yep.
Totally worth the time. But again, you're out in the Dakotas. There's not a whole lot up there.
Yep.
They have
Snow. There's a lot of snow, right?
yeah, in the winter a lot.
My first official event as a member was a winter feast with a bear pit in the snow. So
That
the
would be
snow was
fun.
about 3 or 4 feet on the ground, and my buddy Hagen and I we were officially members, and we're at our first event, and he's like, I kind of want to go out and fight in that, but it's really cold, and all the fighters were coming in to warm up, and they're like, oh, it's too hot in the hall, go back out and fight. And later, you know, when let's see, were we B&B at that point when we went up to see Hagen and Ellis?
Yeah.
So when North Shield became a kingdom, my friend Hagen, who I started the SCA with, was becoming king of North Shield. I think he was the 3rd king. And
Nice.
Ellis, who is currently the Queen of Doom of North Shield right now, with
Mhm.
our friend Dave, who
I
he
got
got
into
into the SCA.
Nice.
And we got to go to their coronation, and it was just amazing. And I don't know where I was rambling with that.
You're talking about Hagen and fighting.
Oh
in
yeah,
the snow.
with Hagen and fighting in the snow, and now it's like he barely wore any armor. He was kind of like the Celt with just the belly band and the shoulders and a helmet and a gorget, and he would 2-stick great swords, and it was just like amazing.
Not so much practically, but he had to try it a couple of times because he's one of those guys that's about as wide as he is tall.
Gotcha.
So I mean, he just walked out with 2 great swords, and all of us are like, no, none of that.
But you're going to be fighting yourself.
There's nothing about that looks good.
And I'm glad he's on our side.
I feel like I would be okay fighting in the snow.
Yeah,
You're
I
like-
think you would dig it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not
no.
too bad. You just got to make sure your armor has warmed up before you get hit.
Because it stings if it doesn't.
I don't really wear any armor, so
I feel
But
like
in your
that's not
helmet,
better.
though, if your helmet and your padding is cold,
The padding gets
Mm-mm.
hard.
yeah,
gotcha.
Memory foam when we're camping.
Yeah, that's the worst.
Mhm.
One time.
You know. Now
So-
that's your helmet.
So everybody has that story that was that pivotal moment when they realized that the SCA was home, like they belonged here, especially people who've been playing as long as you are. So let's hear it.
Honestly, I think it was that tournament of chivalry I went to. So I started out in college. I was poor in college in rural South Dakota. Technically, it was a city in South Dakota.
the
Doesn't-
second largest city.
Yeah, it doesn't make any difference. Smaller than Sierra Vista.
True.
So to put it in perspective, so the Shire there had kind of disintegrated after I'd been in for a couple of years, and I stayed out for about a year and then kind of got back in, and things started getting reinvigorated and started being a lot of fun. And I was getting to the end of my college the first time around, at any rate, and went to that tournament of chivalry, and it was everybody, it was one of those classic road trips for the SCA. Everybody piles in the van, you drive a huge long distance to this event, everybody stays together, everybody has a really good time, you drive back, you talk all about it. And on top of that, two of our friends were supposed to get their laurels at that event. Unfortunately, the gentleman had an aneurysm literally like the weekend before. It did not kill him, he was in the hospital.
Yeah.
Okay.
He was unfortunately never the same again. Brain aneurysms are a horrible thing.
Mhm.
So there was that. His wife, who was also getting her laurel, Ayton, had said, "No, you guys need to go. This is what we were all getting geared up to go for. Go." And so it was that little bit of added tragedy on top of it that just kind of pulled everybody together, and it made for. It sounds bad to say a magical weekend when you're talking about somebody having a tragic life event like that, but at the same time, it pulled everybody around him together into a very cohesive unit. And those of us who went on that trip are really, I mean, even years later when we don't see one another very often at all, still friends. And it made a huge impact in my life. It made the SCA very much a family, and it has stayed that way ever since. So it may sound wrong to call it magical, and it's not magical necessarily in it's that wondrous sense of magical where everything coalesces, not necessarily magical good, but magical wondrous, where everything comes together. And again, really kind of forged a lot of us into a family.
Yeah.
And it was a hell of a weekend.
Yeah, at the time, Conan and Cassandra, Viscount and Viscountess from North Shield, opened their home to about 30 people. And we arrive, and I've never met these people. All of a sudden, there's people who have pointy hats. We didn't have any peers.
Oh yeah, these two who were going to be laureled were literally going to be the first two peers in like a 3-hour race.
Right. And so all of a sudden, we're in the home of a knight and a pelican, and their Viscount and Viscountess, and all of these people, and the crown, because it was Finn and Tamara at that point in time, are staying there, and the crown is there. And we kind of walk in, two porridge country, college country bumpkins, and she's like, "Oh, hey, welcome to my house." And I've never seen that much food. They've been grilling for like the last 2 hours. She's like, "Are you vegetarian or a carnivore?" And I was like, "Meat's good." She goes, "Anything you don't eat?" And I was, at that point in time, I said, "No, I eat basically anything." And yeah, it was just this welcoming into her house, made sure we had a place to put our sleeping bags. And I'm like, "But the king's here." And it's like, "Don't worry about it. It's just Finn." And I'm like, "Okay." But it was that whole, wow. And people take care of each other. And we traveled 14 hours and here we are. And later, we tell these stories and we still get that family. I know that anywhere in the country, if I'd make a post somewhere, I can get help in any major city.
Yep.
When his mom was traveling back from, was it from here?
Yes.
Was traveling back from here. She almost got stuck in Seattle. And I called up Valbrinder and Brigid and was like, "Hey, my mom-in-law maybe gets stuck in Seattle. Would you guys be able to pick her up and like take care of her for the night and get her back to the airport?" They're like, "No problem." And our mom-in-law at that point wasn't quite, or my mom-in-law, his mom, wasn't quite fully into the SCA as she is now. And she's like, "Oh, I don't want to bother these people." I'm like, "Mom, it's a family. It's okay."
Yeah.
And it's that old adage of you put your shield out on the side of the road, somebody's going to help you, right? I know that we've got that network without have to even saying anything. And I think that's one great thing about our organization. I can't say that for my professional organizations. There's a few people I could probably count on from around the country to say, "Hey, this is happening," but worldwide, I mean,
worldwide and not necessarily even know you.
right. Yeah, it's the, "Hey, you're from here. Hey, I know this person from there. Let's get this person taken care of. What can we do?" It's that care and camaraderie and hospitality.
That extended family.
Yeah, it's the, "Hey, I haven't met you, but let's go get dinner." Or, "What can we do for you?" It's good Midwestern values in a lot of ways that people, I think, we're still missing sometimes.
Yeah.
And open up your hearts, open up your home. We've gotten very insular a lot of ways, and I think that's one way that the ESCA has helped, is we are in each other's homes. We get to see each other's cats and kids and see what people are working on from Lakak and from Drakenwald and all of that. And I think that's been wonderful for us as a society to see the breadth of what's going on, and then get to know people who you may never have talked to because you never could be in the same time zone.
Yeah, but now if you see him at an event, you're going to be like, I know you.
It's
We've
like,
talked.
hug!
Yeah. So what are your personal personas and heraldry, and what do they mean to you?
So I do year 1000 Rus. I have no Russian heritage at all, just as a statement of fact.
Got
here.
everything else.
Pretty much. But I started researching Russian stuff actually even before I found the SCA. And when I found the SCA, I dug a little bit deeper, and I find Russia a fascinating place. I think a lot of us who grew up in the 80s and were born in the 70s find Russia a fascinating place, but not necessarily a good one in many ways. So I was intrigued to find out that Russia had this golden age from really about the year 900 until the Mongols in 1250, where people really were doing very well at that time. Reading and writing was pretty common. Women had rights. Trade was prolific. I'm sure they had their wars, they had their split ups and everything, but really life was pretty good if you were Russian at that time. You had the Byzantine Empire, you had the Viking to post-Viking age Denmark and Northern Europe, Sweden, Norway, Finland. And again, it was this kind of golden era for Russia that they've never gotten back. I don't think times really have been as good for them since then.
Catherine the Great, maybe.
Maybe, but still, you had a lot of serfs and peasants, and you don't see a lot of that in medieval Russia.
That's true.
You see a lot of relative equality, which is weird to say for a place like Russia, but really seems to be the case. There's a side story. There's a fantastic set of birch bark letters out of Novgorod by a kid named Onfim. He's about 10 years old from what they can tell. And a lot of these birch barks, and for those who don't know, rather than use paper, the Russians would go out and strip the loose bark off of birch trees, because you can take a stylus and you can press into it and it leaves a dark mark that never goes away. 1,000 years later, you can still read them.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, Russian Post-it notes.
They really are, and short letters. They find everything like business transactions, letters between husbands and wives. There's one that's like, hey, please send me my best pair of socks, I forgot them. Or the wife to the husband, well, the husband's out on business. The wife to the husband, like, hey, don't forget Oli owes you 5 grivna, things like that. But this kid named Onfim, he was obviously learning his letters, because you can see the same characters repeated over and over again as he's practicing. But like any 10-year-old kid, he doodles in the margins. There are guys on horseback wearing armor. And they're totally 10-year-old kid stick figures. But it gives you this real insight into what was going on in Russia at the time. That, this 10-year-old kid is getting educated like it's not a big deal. He doesn't appear to be horribly wealthy. We don't really know anything about him afterwards. But there's, I think, a dozen different parchments or birch barks that either bear his signature or bear his handwriting. And there's a bunch of these things that they found in Novgorod. So again, I find Russian history and culture of that time period really fascinating, because it was a crossroads. A lot of things were changing, and life was really pretty good for them. So it gives a lot of ability to go back and forth. They still had a lot of Viking Age and post-Viking Age Northern Europe going on. A lot of the art styles were there. They have a lot of influence from Byzantium. So it's this beautiful melting pot of cultures, which I really appreciate. Heraldry-wise, heraldry is not really a huge thing in Russia. And so I pretty much didn't have heraldry until she insisted on it.
Well, he wanted to put the crown, so he had to have heraldry.
Well, and you kept pushing me, you need heraldry, you need heraldry. What am I going to use that for?
Well, I wanted to fight in crown, so he needed heraldry.
That was the more important.
So I fought in crown the first, couple of times?
Yeah. At least once before I did, I think twice.
Yeah, twice before he decided to fight in crown too. So
so the heraldry I got is pretty much 2 turtles and an anvil. Turtles are slow but sure. I'm not really fast at getting around to anything if nobody's noticed. Physically I may be quick, but getting to things, less so.
The ADHD doesn't help.
Yeah, it'll get done eventually when I get interested in it. But the anvil is because I'm a craftsman. And the first group of guys that we got together, that was the symbol we used on our shields early on. And it just kind of stuck.
Oh, what he doesn't tell you, though, is they got it from the Animaniacs for the Anvilanians. And so they'd roll up in this beat up minivan with the "Let the Anvils Ring Ding" song playing loudly through the speakers when they pulled into Troll. So you know those Anvil kids were at the event. These are the Anvil kids who brought a not really working trebuchet to an Armageddon catapult. It almost worked. Left it on site and didn't take it home. And then we're all like, those darn college kids from Rapid.
Mistakes were made.
Now we got to deal with this thing.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Did not think that plan.
And I may have, as a water bear, woke him up or one of the other guys up while they were asleep in the battlefield with their white cloaks with their black anvils on them.
We didn't own a tent.
Oh.
We literally crashed out on the battlefield. It was green grass. It's not like Arizona where everything tries to kill you. It was just green.
Right.
And it was September, so it wasn't too cold, like 40s at night.
Yeah, we didn't wake up to frost. The
I
things
was
you do in college.
And I was in high school, so I was, I got a tent from the Girl Scout office because I was a Girl Scout, so I just rent a tent for myself.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, it worked out really well. Let's see, my arms are argent, a pale and grailed gules, a raven close of fronty, and a single horned anvil reversed sable. So basically an anvil, and then a raven close of fronty. I am the only person in the SCA to have a raven close of fronty. And Bruce Draconis from Kaid told me I had the dumbest heraldry, because who would do that? Because it's a raven just kind of hulking like this. And even though Heckle and Jekyll is not a good thing anymore, we all know why. But when I was in high school, I saw a heraldry image, and Marta has seen it too, of a hulky kind of raven sitting on something in a piece of heraldry. And I've never been able to find the book again, and neither could she, but she'd seen the image and she's like, raven close of fronty, we got it, we're good. And I've had it. And recently for February, for putting your arms on a heart, Constanzia from Callantyre was awesome enough to find an actual raven sitting like that and used a picture of a real raven. And I'm just dying. I love that picture and it makes me so happy. So I told them today, I was like, it still makes me so happy. My only thing is I wish I would have turned my engrailedness on its side, because it's a big fat thing going this way and a tall skinny thing going this way. So balancing it on stuff is really hard. But you don't know that until you've tried to paint it on like a shield multiple times and can't get the scale right. And you're like, eh. But I've had it now for almost 20 years. So why change it?
Yeah, I feel you. My heraldry is really built for a heater shield. Doesn't really fit a teardrop.
Yep.
Not fun to paint, not fun to put on clothing. Anyway.
Yeah, the only time I put it on clothing was the 14th century, and I didn't do mine. Wander made my sideless circuit with my anvils like 3 feet wide, and the ravens like 3 feet tall. And I did the stamps for his coat hardy, which has got the turtles and laurel wreaths all over it in anvils. So,
that was your step down stuff from B&B, right?
No, that was our getting our thing and band thing, because we were
right
with everybody.
we left in Rus, we came back in
14th century.
Right.
Just to mess with everybody.
So you two are both super accomplished. You've done so much in your time in the SCA, but do you have any goals that you're still after?
Your turn.
Well, I have a scroll that I'm working on for Sir Wolfgram that's late by a lot, because my muse was fickle and told me I had to do something, and then I had to learn how to go do it.
Just say I smacked him a while ago.
Yeah, but you're still crowned, so it's okay, right?
Yeah, but that's a different raid.
Picky.
Potato.
Time is a construct, right? But I'm challenging myself with that one, and I am like 75% done at this point. I'm really super pleased with it. And I think I might be doing more of that art style, which is pretty cool. Y'all see that I'm not talking about it other than a few people who know about it. I want to get my clothing up to the next level. I'd kind of petered out for a while, and then with the CCC, I made this awesome outfit.
And it looks
And
fabulous.
It has the awesome gathered neckline, which took forever to work with my more to His Majesty's proportions than Liz's. I have shoulders,
Yes, you
and
do.
I had to modify things for having shoulders and traps, which most women don't have.
Mhm.
So I'm going to make a few more of those to kind of really dial in everything that I want. But I like that. Try to keep expanding clothing for the little boy, who I made him all new clothes for Estrella last year. And now those clothes don't fit. He got to wear them for a weekend.
He grows.
He grows.
They do that. That's what happens
You just
with
gotta
kids.
stop feeding them.
Yeah, but then they whine.
It's true.
I mean,
Yeah. Our,
he's like,
our,
I'm
our
hungry.
son wears my stuff now.
Oh,
I know.
Jesus.
Right now, Mason and Benton are close enough that hand-me-downs from Mason go to Benton, but very shortly that may not work unless Mace is going to be a tall kid, but he's only a freshman in high school right now. So, but it's, I don't know what else. I want us to get back to weaving fabric,
Mhm.
because we have a big, huge floor loom and we've only done that once. And now
Hey, Ben's old enough not to play on the treadles anymore.
that is true. We had that time where little boys were fascinated with how that loom works, and now the cats are fascinated with, living in the loom.
They're helping.
So helping like cats. So I'd like us to get back to doing that, because that's really a two-man job for as large as that loom is. But I've been doing a lot more spinning and fiber and that kind of thing. So I think I'm gonna stay mostly in the fiber arts, and I mean some of the scroll work too, but I think that's kind of my things. I know he's got plans to make us a house.
I have things to make. I have a lot of things. So one of my major goals right now is just to make everything for our camp look better, if that makes sense. We've got all the stuff we need for camp. Now it's time to really kind of dial in all the little details. Like the chest I made, I'm going to have more of those. Everything that I can get my hands on is going to get carving on it, because that's what you see in a big chunk of the Viking Age North and Russia is when you have all winter long and you're stuck inside, carving suddenly becomes a really useful distraction. So as Zippy once put it, I'm going to go over here in the corner and carve this so I don't stab somebody. And yeah, that's living in the North. So
Yeah,
there's a lot of things like that I want to do. I want to make a lot more carved stuff. I want to make a lot more ornate stuff for camp, mostly because I just really like it. The other thing I've been spending a lot of time on is, for those that don't know, I also do Eastern martial arts. So I do Kung Fu. I've done that for 18 years now, 19 years, something like that.
22.
No, not Kung Fu.
Yeah,
Has it been? No.
we've
it's
lived
10
here. We've lived here 20.
Have we?
I have now.
Oh, okay. So it's been a while.
22 years.
So one of the things we picked up and started doing in that is a lot more Chinese weapon work, because there are other organizations that do sparring with it now. So it's not just all the flashy stuff. It's actually much more like rapier, cut and thrust. So it's a lot of fun. But one of the things I want to do is figure out how to translate some of that to SCA training as well, is figure out how to train more efficiently. I don't think either of us have it quite right, if that makes sense, because martial arts doesn't typically spar enough, and SCA, all we do is spar. A big learning piece for me very recently is I had Dom and Ed and myself and one of the guys from our Kung Fu class coming in and doing this cut and thrust with plastic or nylon simulators. So they're really nice,
Fully
really
masked,
quick.
fully
Yeah, yeah.
distanced,
All that.
all of that.
So masks and
Masks.
fencing masks, both. Hand protection, fairly light sparring. And one of the things that was interesting is even though Dom and Ed have a tremendous amount of experience fighting with weapons, and this gentleman doesn't, he had much better footwork than Dom especially, and pretty much ran over Dom.
Really?
Really, it was very educational for me. Even though Dom has a much clearer understanding of how to employ weapons, the fact that his footwork couldn't keep up was really telling. And this is a guy built a lot like His Majesty, not quite as big,
Not
but
quite as
he's
heavy.
yeah, not quite as heavy.
I mean,
He's
muscle wise.
yeah,
He's kind of raily.
yeah. Okay. So imagine His Majesty and me crossed, because he's got His Majesty's height,
And
but
breadth
he's
of shoulders.
and breadth of shoulders, but he's not bulky.
So Morgan Ivan love child.
Yeah, well, there you go. Take that for what you will.
Way to make it weird,
Nice.
That's what wives are for.
right?
Wow.
So it was, again, it was really educational, because Josh, the guy from Kung Fu, had never really done anything like this. I mean, he's trained some, but nowhere near to the level that most of us have. But his footwork was enough better because of the Kung Fu training that it paid for itself. He didn't have a big diversity of things he could do, but what he could do is move well. And again, that paid. So one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, goals SCA wise, is how do we translate that into our SCA training without necessarily going rote martial arts? How do we train good footwork? How do we train the good repetition without being boring? How do we get people to actually train rather than just go fight? How do we prove that it's valuable? And I don't really have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of questions that I'm asking. So that's one of my goals, is to try and figure some of that out. And
It's
not like
funny because that's one of the epiphanies I had a couple of years ago, was that footwork is more important than sword work,
yes,
Mhm.
because footwork gets you in a better position and gets your opponent out of position.
as I've told people for a while, if you can't keep your feet under you, you can't fight. That's all there is to it.
Especially in the battlefield.
Yeah.
I mean,
It-
in war, that's exceedingly helpful. You
'Cause
can't take a charge unless your feet are set correctly.
Yeah.
You can't do a charge unless your feet are going correctly.
it was,
So
I mean, most of us at this level understand that and realize it and even tell people. But for me, it was that bright light that turns on when you actually see it happen.
Mhm.
When you
Yeah.
see some guy who doesn't have a lot of sword experience, but has really good footwork because of his training, not because he's naturally athletic. Josh is gangly and awkward, really.
He trips over his own feet when he's walking, kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it really is the training, and it's helped him immensely. And he's also not young. I think he just had his 40th birthday. So this is not a young sports guy we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But watching the application of the footwork to a guy who had fairly basic training in sword, and how much of a difference it made, was again enlightening. So
I try to incorporate footwork and Pel when I'm doing Pel work, and when I'm teaching with Pel.
Yep.
That, because so many people do Pel work just standing there.
it's static, which is
Static
great
and-
for your arm, but really doesn't give you a lot of benefit.
Because
So-
you're not going to be throwing that shot like that.
And
Basically,
so I've tried to incorporate and come up with drills that are, you're going to throw this shot and then use your, which is going to pull their guard here, and that's why you're stepping here.
Yep.
Because that you've now opened up this zone, but you have to step to it.
And if
So,
you don't take the step,
I haven't been super successful, but my squire's getting better.
good. That's all you can ask for. Again, like I said, that's one of my goals. I don't actually have any answers yet, but I really have a lot of questions. So
well, it doesn't hurt that you won a sword championship in martial arts.
I come from a much deeper pool. That's the other thing I've realized over the last year or 2 years now, I guess, is training and going and seeing everything. The SCA is a much deeper pool than a lot of us give it credit for.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Especially if you look at all the online content that is popping up now, with
Mhm.
everybody being stuck at home and nothing better to do. Oh my God.
No, you're absolutely right. It's another one of those eye openers for me, because again, we all kind of think it is, but at the same time, it's our hobby. So you kind of lose scope sometimes, or at least I do.
Mhm.
And seeing a lot of other martial arts start posting things and doing things, and then kind of comparing it and training and looking at everything. No, we've got a good deep pool. We've been doing this a long time, and we've been doing it really seriously for 50 years plus. And it shows really when you come right down to it. It's very reassuring in many ways.
Mhm. Very much.
So what project or job or art have you done that you've been really proud of?
Oh, ever or recently?
Ever?
Ooh.
I mean, you could do recently too, but
If I had to pick ever, I would actually pick the Silver Horde we did from 2009 because that's
Yeah.
not my normal wheelhouse of stuff. And I really got a huge kick out of doing it. It was fun. It taught me a lot of skills. It let me do something that I wouldn't normally do. And it just, again, I really enjoyed it. One of these days I want to get back around and do some more silver work because it was simply fun to do.
And ways to break goldsmiths' brains.
So one of the things I looked at is all the actual silver objects. I looked at a lot of pictures of them and tried to figure out how they made them. And a lot of the twisted braided bracelets and torques that you see are actually tapered wire. So they're not drawn through a draw plate like normal wire. They're not all consistent. They're thicker in the middle and they taper so that when you twist them all up, you get a thick bundle in the middle and thin ends. So you have to do that by hand. You can't run it through a draw plate. So this stuff is all hammered out. And the most efficient way to do that is hot. You heat it up, you forge it out. Not being my normal wheelhouse, I didn't really think this all the way through, and I just went and got pure silver, which it turns out is really what a lot of the Viking Age stuff is. It's close to pure silver. They're running coins out of the Sassanid dynasty, the Muslim caliphates at the time, who had big silver mines, and the silver there is running 99% pure silver, 98% pure silver most of the time. So really, really high quality silver. What I didn't realize is that modern jewelers almost exclusively use sterling. 925, 92.5% silver. The rest of it's nickel and copper and other things. And the reason that's important is sterling is a lot harder. It doesn't wear as fast as the traditional stuff does, but you can't work it hot. If you heat it up red hot and hit it with a hammer, it goes all over.
It shatters.
Yeah, I had to learn that one the hard way later. So yeah, little burning fragments of silver everywhere. Thankfully, it was outside. But before I'd figured any of this stuff out, we were doing the Silver Horde, and we were making it out of bullion coins that we'd ordered. And so we're out on the porch at the time, putting in a little fire brick forge, hammering it out red hot. And just before Australia, we had Gawkler and Kate come down from Antir at the time. Kate was a jeweler by trade, and Gawkler is the antiquities merchant. I'm sure you guys have seen him.
Yep.
Used to hang around with Hannes a lot. So she comes out to watch what we're doing. I didn't know she was a jeweler, and she just had a meltdown. You watched her brain just seize up, like you can't do
hot work
that.
silver.
You can't hot work silver. I'm like, why not? And I'm sitting here hammering away on it.
That's how we've done the rest of this.
Like, it's no big deal. Because again, being an amateur at it, I didn't know that you weren't supposed to use pure silver, or that you can't hot work, sterling. So for me, some of the moral of this is it's okay to be an amateur. You're going to try things that other people already know won't work, but they're not quite right.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. The real difference between an amateur and a professional is a professional knows how to fix their mistakes.
Sometimes.
Most of the time.
Well, what it generally means is that even professionals make mistakes. They just know how to recover from it.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Almost every professional woodworker I follow says exactly the same thing. And a lot of them on their blogs that I read, they'll even show you, hey, here's where I made a mistake and here's how I fixed it. Because that's the difference. If an amateur, like you say, if an amateur botches something, they
Throw it away.
Yep. And that's what I had to do with silver when I messed up. Like, I left one in too long and melted it, and well, that was the end of that.
Yeah. Well, that project was fun. I think what was really fun about that is Storvar helped me. It's Ivan's apprentice. He helped me get the horde up to the, we had a lockbox for it, but I basically carried it in a bag, brought the lockbox with it's a glass encased lockbox, because we had 3.5 pounds of silver in that horde. And it was bracelets and chunks of trade silver and chunks of wire, necklaces, torques, those kinds of things. And I spent like 15-20 minutes making a artistically zhuzhed pile.
Like you dig it up.
Like you would find it in a dig, like the bag that it was in had disintegrated, and here's the pile of silver. So I put the documentation with it. At the time, I didn't take photographs of it when I said it, because I was on my way to the battlefield. Like, Storvar grabbed the stuff I brought with me. I had my helmet and off I went. And I come back at the end of the day to come check in with things and pick things up. And out comes Baldric. And Baldric's like, oh, Bianca, you got to see this thing they have in there. It's amazing. I'm like, oh, what did you see, Baldric? Because I hadn't really seen any of the other entries because it was the 25th anniversary of Estrella. It was silver, bring something silver, right? Mm-hmm. Interpret it as you will. And I was like, well, what'd you see? And he's like, somebody did a silver hoard. But, and this is the part I didn't like, it's all separated out. It wasn't like in a pile like it should be. And I was like, huh, well, that's interesting. Because that's not how I left it this morning. And so what we come to find out is Ari, who had no idea, and she's my best friend, had no idea what we'd all been working on, because it was Ivan and myself and Master Stir Stefan. And we'd all been working on this for months. And she couldn't come over to the house. She couldn't watch us do work. She's like, oh, this is driving me crazy. I don't know what you guys are doing. So because she was one of the judges. And what she finds out is one of somebody's apprentice was a museum curator. So they had sat and separated everything out in the case and then relocked it. Because
it drove their OCD insane.
Yeah, they had to archive it.
You would do that.
No, I would leave it in a pile because it ought to be in a pile, but oh.
But yeah, that was fun. That project was fun. I really think Dom's Pelican scroll, his Pelican Laurel scroll, because that was myself. He did the woodworking on it. Ari helped with us getting the gilding on and the gemstones. And her ladyship Ponaria did a lot of I had the idea, had it sketched out. She has this way of taking the sketch that I had where I couldn't get the proportions quite right and making it perfect. Mm-hmm. And then we painted and gessoed and did all this stuff and then had to fight with the birch bark that I put on there. But it still turned out exactly how it was in my head.
Awesome.
Which that doesn't always happen, right? You have a vision in your head and then it usually gets at least 95% there on a good project. But this was like 100% the project. And it was just all of us coming together to work on it and make it happen. And then he had no idea what it was going to be. And then to hear the favorite part, I think, for scribes is at court when the scrolls get presented and you hear that intake of breath before everyone goes, ooh. And that's payment right there. I think as an artisan, that verbal sound you hear when someone goes, wow, that's the thing. And I think that one was one of my favorites, as well as, even though it was so difficult, because it seems like every time I take a clothing commission, my modern world explodes, and sometimes literally, was the clothes that we made for Al-Anon and Amber. Mm. And that was myself and my apprentice, my student at the time, and Ida were all, helped me out with this and things like that. And we stayed up 26 hours straight finishing things, driving on the way up, finishing things in the parking lot, getting the last buttons and loops on, because that's always the last thing. Mm-hmm. And sitting at the back of court because I was exhausted and looking out and looking at the lights hit the clothes, and I'm like, oh, that looks so pretty. That was worth it. Because the silk just shone and it looked just perfect and the proportions were right. And it was just like, okay, yeah, that's good.
Yeah, it's funny you were saying about like the reaction in court over the scrolls. Like, it's not quite the same reaction, but at least with the virtual courts, everybody gets to actually see the scroll close up. And then if you watch in the comments, you'll see that noise that you're used to hearing is now just typed.
That is really nice to get to see the scrolls up close.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's only good.
It's like the one really true benefit.
Well, and maybe that's something we can continue on. So when you guys have a court next, like when we actually get to be in person, if at the end of the court there's a photograph or a little slideshow that appears on the Kingdom website or on the Kingdom YouTube of here's the scrolls and things that came out in court today, mm-hmm. with maybe even a photograph of the recipient getting it, something like that, for those who can't make it or for those who are just watching it virtually. Because I still hope that the courts will get broadcast virtually, because that is such an accessibility issue for people who can't make it, for people who maybe, you know,
Yeah.
they could be in the hospital, they could be at home sick, they could be having to watch kids that day, you know, couldn't make it or couldn't travel or had to work and has got YouTube playing in the background while they're coding, you know. It's one of those things.
None of
Ed,
us ever do.
none of us ever do that, no. It's one of those, I think it's going to be a great accessibility item for things, especially for like collegiums, because I know there's talk in Atlantia right now about crowdfunding hotspots for when you're holding a collegium to be able to tape things going on live, so people can actually broadcast over the internet while the classes are happening to get more people there who can't go. Or if I have these two classes at the same time, I wanted to take this one, couldn't make it, I can take this one and then go watch that one later. You know, that's just wonderful, I think. And I just think electronically getting more access, and then for those of us who, I have 30% hearing loss on my right side. So being able to have things that are subtitled are really helpful to me, because I miss words, especially if it's high allergy season, those kinds of things. And I mean, I don't consider myself that horrible having that much hearing loss. A lot of people have a lot worse. Sure. And I know in our kingdom, we don't have silent heralds, other kingdoms do, but being able to have the opportunity to be able to find out what's happening when you're at the back of court and can't quite hear, you know, if you can watch it later or go, somebody can be up there doing things, or, you know, I think it's just all helpful if we can help bridge that modernness with the media, as well as still have our SCA fun.
Agreed.
Yeah, I had somebody, I remember my first like court at the park as Baron before I had learned to be loud. And somebody came up to me after court and let me know that I did okay, but they were at the back of the hall, they were at the back of the park, you know, the back of the court, and they were talking with somebody and they couldn't really hear me. And I was like, I just kind of put that in my back pocket. And then the next court night, when they opened court, I called that person into court and I had a seat for them right in the front.
Nice.
Yeah, you got to speak to the cheap seats, as my theater teacher would always say.
Yeah.
I got complimented. I've been a lot of Raffenheim. Our household has been volunteering at the University of Arizona's pod for vaccinations, and a lot of us have been running traffic just because, hey, we've done this at Estrella a lot. And so I got complimented from one of the police officers going, I can hear you across the field. And I was like, yes, but you have your mask on. I'm like, that makes no difference.
Nah.
You can call to the back of the court. You can call to another army across the field. It's the same thing. We can speak loud and make it heard. Yep. Not everybody has that training who sits in seats, and that is a learning experience for everybody. And not everybody can do it because they just don't have the breath control or the voice to do it. But again, accessibility, let's try to make it as easy for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and to add to that point, especially coming out of the pandemic, we want to encourage people that if they're not feeling well, stay home.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that in some ways, it's almost been a blessing for the SCA, because now we have all this digital content. And now we have all of these other ways that we can connect and see each other. You don't have to be there. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, I know I sat and watched Lockhawk's Crown.
Nice.
Because it's up on YouTube now. You can watch.
Ooh, cool.
Okay, let's get back to the questions. So what are you known for?
Ooh, stuff. Making stuff.
Gumby. You're Gumby.
You narrowed it really far down. You just whittled it down.
That's the thing. I am a jack of all trades. I do a little bit of everything. And a lot of people have come up, hey, can you show me this string? Can you show me woodworking? Can you show me this? Sure. Again, I do a lot of things. People used to tease me that I was the stuff Laurel.
The MacGyver Laurel.
Yeah, because I wasn't Laurel for any one specific thing. It's just stuff. These days, probably better known for woodworking and carving because I've done a lot of that recently and I really like it. So, um,
Yeah.
but that and fighting wise, as she said, less as I get older, but still kind of a bendy Gumby guy. So
The first time you saw himself on video, he's like,
do I really bend that
I
far?
really burned that far? I'm like, yeah. Why do you think they call you Gumby, honey? He's like, I had no idea. And I'm like, oh, good Lord. Okay.
That's different when you see yourself on video.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of watching myself on video. I spend too much time critiquing everything I'm doing wrong.
Why's my
Like
shield
what?
up there?
What am I doing with my shield there? Why is it there?
Right?
Which is why you listen to your wife. And I'm like, stop canting your shield.
Yes, dear.
Stop snuggling your shield and you're not cold. Get it out there. Yeah. I don't know. What am I known for?
Documentation.
That's true. Documentation. I'm sometimes
Research.
called the scary Laurel because I'm intense, not because I'm like actually scary in person. I mean, people think I do have resting sniper face because I do. It's past the resting bee face. It is resting sniper face because if I'm thinking about something, my whole face goes blank, and I probably scowl a little bit because my brain's working, and I got to squint because that just makes it better. I guess I don't know. When we were B&B, I got told I couldn't do
Knitting. You can't knit.
I didn't knit then. I couldn't do any handwork when I was sitting on B&B because I would scowl and it would scare people away. And I'm like, but I'm bored and lonely and there's nobody to talk to and
Stop
okay.
scaring them away.
Okay. Damn it. Alrighty. So I'm the scary Laurel not because I'm mean and grumpy and all of that. It's because I get really excited about stuff and I'm really intense and I want to tell you all about the cool things I know and yeah, I can just go off for a while. But I really just want to make sure you know about all the cool things and you can just tell me to stop and I will. But I've also tried to let that in of like, so do you want the quick answer? Do you want the college answer? Do you want the let's go have drinks and we'll sit and BS about it for 3 hours answer? Which is, I think, helpful. And as a peer, that's good to know. It's kind of like with your kids, do you want a hug? Do you want a shoulder to cry on, or do you just want to rant? Right? It's that whole thing of when you're talking to people who want to know information, do you want the quick answer? Do you want critique or do you want applause? Mm-hmm. It's that whole I grew up doing music competitions, and if you think SCA judging is scary for some people, I'm playing piano at a semi-professional level and they don't like the color of my shoes. Or the fact that my elbow turned a little too high with this note and it looks floppy like a duck. These are comments I have gotten in musical performances of piano. Yeah, so I, as a judge, try to go, hey, this is really cool. I like this part. Here's cool things you could do to make it even cooler. Hey, here's more information about this topic. I try to be really good at that. I'm currently judging professionally. I'm judging papers for the Design Build Fly competition for the AIAA. And these are college kids'
I want to say what the AIAA is.
Aeronautics Institute. I can't remember the other two. But I'm basically reviewing kids' capstone projects from college.
Wow.
And they're 60-page papers. And I'm one of the harsh judges because I'm like, I'm sorry, your figures don't match, but this is like work, right? This is not art. This is how you're going to be in the field, that if something's wrong, something's wrong.
Yep.
And you know, hey, you guys did all this cool stuff, but you said this figure said this, and I'm looking at that, and it doesn't say that. There's a difference between telling the truth and saying, hey, this is why the score isn't that high because my rubric tells me you only get 2 points and you only answered half the question, which means you get 1 point. Mm-hmm. But for arts, it's more the, cool, you made this thing. Are you going to make more? Here's how I would say if you make it again, because honestly, I'm not an artisan to start with. It takes me 100 times on a lot of things to get stuff right. The only thing I've picked up immediately has been music and string stuff like knitting and crochet. Spinning took me a long time to figure out because I'm left-handed naturally, and he doesn't spin left.
I am not left-handed naturally. at all.
Right. And so I had somebody teach me how to spin left-handed, then I could translate it back and forth and do both. Okay, cool. But I have to make the same dress 100 times before I was able to get the seams underneath here to like meet.
Mhm.
I've made every mistake. I will admit it. It took me 3 months to do the drafting for the pattern for this to get everything to fit right and go right. And I still, on this dress, put the sleeves in wrong and had to redo the entire over the shoulder seams that I'd already hand finished. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm a Laurel. I'm not a Laurel in costuming. I'm a Laurel because I like to go do things, go to make things, do stuff, learn more things. But again, I will paint myself in circles shading on a scroll and have to be stopped because I'm going in circles. Oops. Shade, must keep shading. I think we don't show failure enough.
Yeah.
We
agreed.
always show, it's the Instagram problem where you show the pretty thing at the end. You don't show all the work it takes to get there or the failure that it took to get there. Ed's always commenting about Michael Jordan's success through failure. You don't learn something if you do it right the first time.
No.
At all. I have made so many mistakes. I've cut out so much fabric wrong. Done things horrible. I mean, we have to show failure.
Yeah.
Like we got to show people it's okay to fail. You learn something. Let's go make another one. It's okay to chuck it in the bin. Make the next one better. You know, you learn from it. Oh, you'll make a different mistake. It's okay. I really think as a society and as artisans and even fighters,
Yeah.
it's you got to throw that shot to get it the right angle at the right time a couple thousand times.
Yeah.
How many times do you throw a shot before it really works? Generally a lot.
Well, it was one of my favorite conversations. I had a kid come up and ask me what it took to win crown. And I told him, I'm like, you have to lose so many fights, like thousands of fights. And the look on his face was priceless. I'm like, yeah, because you have to go chase everybody you can't beat.
Yep.
And keep at it and learn from your failures.
Yep.
And then you have to have the confidence to know that you can win it. That was this one's problem.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I might know a thing about that.
Yeah.
Can confirm.
Yeah. Her Majesty and I have never, ever talked about that on the side of the field, ever.
Never.
Nope.
So on the failure thing, I made a dress for Greta for her Laureling ceremony, which was a surprise.
Mhm.
And so I printed it and the whole thing. I only had, this much fabric to work with. And the gores that I use are directional. And I didn't realize this until after everything was printed, but I printed them all the same way. So technically, if you lay that dress out, it kind of goes because all the gores are going the same way.
Mhm.
But I'll tell you what, I like triple check that now when I'm printing pattern pieces. So
Ari did that on Cecilia's sundress that now Ari has.
oh,
And she ended up cutting the dress at the gore line and flipping the piece and seaming it back together. And you can't even tell there's a seam there because, Ari is magic and doesn't count. But it was because the striped fabric went in a certain direction and she
Right.
didn't realize she cut the pattern pieces wrong. We had no more of that fabric. And yeah, it's amazing. You're like,
The difference between an amateur and a professional.
yep.
mhm,
Yeah.
impressive.
Yep.
So what would be your advice to a new member?
Oh, try everything.
And see, I'm going to say, take your time. You're going to want to do everything and it's going to get overwhelming. You're going to feel bad about yourself because you can't do everything. And then you're going to feel like you don't accomplish enough and you're going to feel just overwhelmed. And I think that's one of the problems in our kingdom is we are so small.
Mhm.
And you can see all the things and go to all the events every weekend and do all of this. I mean, where we grew up, it was our shire had 2 events a year and we maybe traveled to 2 other events in the whole year.
3 typically.
Armageddon and Ides of March
And
and
generally there was one other
Right.
that I'd go to. I
But-
made about 5 events a year.
right. And I made a few more when I moved to Illinois because I was traveling every weekend to war practices and those kinds of things. But you didn't feel the pressure to do everything all the time. You had time to go make a set of clothes for this one event. So you had time to do things in time to make those mistakes and not have it to get ready the night before. I think it's the take your time, find what you do like, try things, figure out, oh, I didn't like that. Use the loaner equipment. You don't need to go buy archery equipment. You don't need to go buy fighting equipment. Everybody's got loaner gear. Everybody's got something in their closet that can probably fit you. Go try things.
See, try everything.
But you don't have to do it all at once. I know, but you have enthusiasm of do it all right now. And
you should do everything. Try everything because you don't know what you're going to like.
Right.
Like I never would have picked that I was going to be a woodworker. Seriously. I thought I was going to get into blacksmithing and casting. Hated casting.
Really?
I love the actual casting part. Pouring molten metal, freaking awesome.
It's the pounding sand.
I didn't even mind that. I hated the cleanup afterwards. Oh my
Yeah.
God, I did that so much.
Yeah.
Like pouring the molten bronze was great. Pewter, fantastic. Cleaning it all up. Is there something else I can do?
So much filing.
That's so much filing. Just
Mhm.
no. And yet it's funny. I go to woodwork and I don't mind the cleanup and the finish work, which a lot of people hate. It's weird how things work out, and you don't know till you try it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So my advice, and again, she's right. Don't try and do everything at once. That's a bad plan. Some of us try it anyway. It's still a bad plan. Try everything you can get your hands on. Somebody here knows something or someone who does what you're interested in.
Mhm.
If you see something interesting, walk up to the person doing it, ask them what they're doing and how they do it, and if they take time to show you. 90% of the time, they will absolutely take more time than you want to give them.
Yep.
Because
So
we're
true.
really invested in this. If you come up to me at an event where I'm doing woodworking and you don't walk away at some point, I will keep talking to you about it because I'm really interested in it. That's just the way we are.
Yep.
You watch guys like Morgan and I talk fighting. It's what we are really enthusiastic about. We will talk your ear off. It's what we do.
It's like,
Just
honey,
a couple of minutes here
now.
and there.
I'm getting in the car. We're leaving.
Yeah.
That's why I always make sure I have the keys.
That's a wise man.
Yeah, except for, so he always blamed me that I was the social butterfly that would leave us at events. And I'm like, I'm always waiting for you. I love you. We're always waiting for you to finish a conversation with somebody. And it's always a good conversation. And I know it's great, but I'm tired and I want to go eat. Or it's 3 hours home. We got to drive, honey.
Can confirm that's me.
It is.
Yeah. So yeah, my recommendation to new folks, try everything, talk to people, learn what they're doing. If you're interested in it, they will absolutely help you with it. And don't be afraid of people because they're wearing a belt or a hat or a medallion or anything. Most of us are wearing these things because we're really invested and interested in what we do to get them.
Mhm.
It's not the thing we're interested in, it's what we do.
Yeah.
Like as a Laurel, I can't not make things. That's one of the reasons I'm a Laurel. I can't. Even without the SCA, I would be making things. Without the SCA, I would be doing martial arts. It's just part of who I am. The SCA just gives me an outlet for all of that all in one place.
It's sort of convenient that way.
It
It
is.
really is.
Yeah, it is the all-encompassing hobby.
Right?
Yep. I only have one hobby, really, just one.
Right? Just one. It envelopes everything else.
Exactly.
So, and it can be somebody that inspired you on your way up, or who inspires you now.
Oh, I had two people that really inspired me on the way up, so I'm going to go with them. One of them was Tarek, now Duke Tarek, triple peer out of North Shield. He did everything, and everything he did Anglo-Saxon, but everything he did was amazing.
Isn't he a quadruple peer?
Technically, yes.
Did they finally pell him?
Yeah, they pelled him. He tried to avoid it for years and couldn't.
I got trapped.
His own words. But
Mine too.
again, he just did everything. He looked amazing. He did all the things, fought brilliantly, just super nice guy to hang out with, everything. Just down to earth and totally a a neat guy to hang around. And I learned a lot, even though he may not have realized it. I learned a lot just watching him do things. Like, how did he, he had a class, 5 easy steps to make stuff.
Mm-hmm. I teach
Literally,
that one.
that was it. That's his class. And it was, hey, here's how you do basic research. Here's how you set about getting your tools. And it was all the basics on how you go about making almost anything in a general sense.
Yep.
So you had a plan going forward. So he's one of the guys that inspired me early on, and literally still inspires me because he's still doing amazing things. The other one would be Justin here in Triskathir. And funny story for Justin. Before I moved here, one of the guys that got into the SCA is a gentleman up north named Elliot. And he started in Phoenix. He's actually from Phoenix originally. So he had been to a couple of war practices and gone to an Estrella and filmed a coronet tourney when he was like 18, 19 years old. He hadn't really fought in any of them. He'd just gone to them. And then he moved to South Dakota and didn't figure there'd be SCA up there. So he never looked for it until like 10 years later. So he tells me, after I've come down to Triskathir, I've come back, and he tells me, hey, so I've got these old videos. You want to watch some of them? I'm like, sure, let's take a look. So we see this coronet tourney. He's like, yeah, there's this guy in there and he's fighting like Madhu and sword. And he's really cool. And I want to, I want you to take a look and tell me what you think. And I watched the video. I'm like, that's Justin. I know that guy. He's really awesome. So the other reason for me personally that Justin made a big impact is I moved down here. And again, I'm 28 years old at the time when I moved to Atenveldt. I've already been doing SCA up north for a while, but I'm starting to look around as a young professional, kind of at the rest of your life, as you do in your late 20s. And Justin is one of those guys I looked at and went, he's in his 40s. He's been doing SCA since he was 15. This is something I can literally do the rest of my life. This is not just something I can do for a couple of, yeah, technically you can do it for a couple of years and go on to do other things, but it's not something that you necessarily get to the end of. Right. You don't find an end to this hobby. You can do something in the SCA until the very end. And for me, that's incredibly reassuring that I can go into this hobby for the rest of my life and have something fascinating and interesting to do. And what I find fascinating and interesting may change over that time, but there'll always be something out there that's interesting. And the people are some of the most wonderful things about the SCA, because they keep everything together. They keep life fascinating. I've met some of the greatest folks in the SCA. Quite literally, just genuinely wonderful people all the way around. People who I have something in common with, people who like to make and build and do things. And for me, that's one of the most important things out there. And Justin, talking about the people who inspire you, was kind of that moment of realization. When you see this guy who started as a teenager and he's still there, and he's still good friends with a lot of the people that he was friends with early on in the SCA, that you can do that your entire life and do amazing things. Again, that was really reassuring, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And inspiring. And Justin's still pretty awesome.
And scary. He is. I got my black belt in Taekwondo from Sir Justin.
Yep. And
as he's gotten older, he's just sacrificed speed for power. And it's he slowed down a little bit. He's not slower than most young people, but you can tell he's slowed down, but it's power and charisma. And that smile. Because you know when he's up to no good. He's got that little, smirk, and you just know.
You've been drinking whiskey again, haven't you?
Yep. Or you've been doing car bombs with Sean, haven't you? Yep. Okay. But man, there's been so many people over the years. I think the first person to really inspire me a lot, besides Tarek and Fina, because we always wanted to be Tarek and Fina when we grew up, and well, we kind of are now.
Working hard at it.
Yeah, working hard at it. Is Viscountess Kalinda. She's now up, I believe, in Antir. She was a princess of Northshield when it was still a principality with Sir Galen the Smiling. And she just taught me a lot about court and the graces and things to do and how to act. Even though we weren't on our court, she was good friends with my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, his sister and brother-in-law. And it was one of those things of, wow, this is a peer in the SCA. This is a princess in the SCA. Here's all the things I would never have thought of. And just some of the deportment that you have to have and those kinds of things. Because you don't take classes on it now, right? We don't have etiquette and cotillion and all of those kinds of things like we did in the past. So some of those things that as consorts, we don't get taught. And I took those lessons to heart of thinking about things where, you know, her statement was, if you see a shiny hat, they're always excellent. Yeah. They'll correct you if they're not. And that's what I've told everybody. I'm like, hey, everyone's excellent. Because even if you're a duchy, you still have a county.
Yep.
You've just kind of ranked up a little bit. And, you know, they'll correct you. And if it's someone who's a crown, they'll say they're still excellent. It is that was a really good point to me, because seeing a few shiny hats, it was really like, oh gosh, what do we do? And, you know, and considering the first crown I ever met hit on me because he was drunk as a skunk.
He apologized.
He apologized immediately once he realized he was not doing his kingly duty as being a good guy and a knight. And this was Osis from Eldamir, who was a king of Mid-Realm and came all the way out to North Shield to Armageddon, this little event. And my friend Jeff had picked him up from the airport, and they had gotten, I don't even know how they got to the event, which was an hour from town, but they had been drinking. And they come into where we were all by a fire and talking and laughing, and I'm drinking a soda and hanging out with people, and there's music playing, and he comes up and he's like, hello, my lady, how are you? And his squire does the same thing. I'm like, and I knew who it was because you couldn't miss this guy. If you think Chris Hemsworth looks like Thor, he does. But Osis had a t-shirt that said there's a Norse god behind this t-shirt, and you would believe him. Blonde hair, huge shoulders, so tall. And just, he was even kingly when he was drunk. Just that aura about him, right? And I was like, hello, Your Majesty. And he's like, and how are you? You know, and he asked me how I was, and my friend Nancy comes floating by going, she's too young. Because she was drunk as a skunk. And he's like, my lady, how old are you? And I was like, oh, I've seen 18 summers, Your Majesty. And this 6-foot+ guy all of a sudden falls to his knees, kisses my hand and apologizes. And he's like, I obviously need a drink of water because I am not acting correctly. And then he found out I'm one of like 6 college kids who came in a minivan, and I'm the only one who has a tent because I'm bunking in with some other people in a tent, and they're all sleeping either in the minivan or the battlefield. And he made sure, because we had just paid our tuition and drove 500 miles to the event, and we all had like, you know, the loaf of bread, the block of cheese, and the sausage that was for the weekend, each of us. And he made sure we had sandwiches, drinks, some gas money to get home, and he all gave us his token.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, this is a king. He realized he made a mistake, immediately corrected it, and then corrected it more, and was like awesome and hospitable, and made sure we were taken care of as his populace. And I was like, wow, okay. And what makes me sad is he and his squire, who was then a knight, got killed on a car crash on the way to an event in Eldamir, because he was one of the first crowns of Eldamir when they became a kingdom. And I remember getting the phone call and going, huh, he was the first king I met, but I learned so much from that one interaction I had with him over a weekend that, own up to your mistakes, apologize, treat people like family, take care of people. And it was just, wow. I wish I could have told him that, but as the first crown I've ever met, I will always remember that. And it could have been a bad experience. I could have been talking bad about knights from now on up because the first king I ever met was a jerk and hit on me and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
But he turned it around immediately when he realized he was not acting well. And that's a lot. And that to me is inspiring and things to remember and things we talk about. Because you're always going to be someone's first peer they meet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
First impressions, unfortunately, matter so much and color someone's perceptions forever.
Yeah. Well, like I'm always cognizant of that and trying to make sure that like I help people have those moments that will make them come back forever.
Mhm.
It's
That is-
important.
Yep.
So,
How you treat people.
thinking about all the traditions that you've seen between the two kingdoms, what's something that you think we've lost over the years that you'd like to see come back?
Well, I know a North Shield tradition I wish we had in Atenveldt, but we don't have enough feasts to make it work. So in North Shield, after every feast, the manly men of North Shield, now at this point, it does not need to be men. It just needs to be anybody who would like to get up and help. They basically assembly line and clean every person's feast gear, and help clean the kitchen at the end of the event.
Oh,
It's a
that's nice.
huge trail of people, and usually like one of the knights or one of the dukes gets up and says, "Time to clean." And it just happens.
Tara,
Tarek started it, and it was the manly men of North Shield, and it was this, everybody takes their shirts off, and it was this kind of fun thing.
well, and
We don't need that.
it got the fighters involved in helping with the feast
Right.
in some way.
Yep.
They didn't have to cook it. They didn't have to serve it. They helped clean up. So
Yep.
at least they were invested in that part of it as well.
But I think that camaraderie, because usually at the end of feast, everybody just scurries off, and then unfortunately the kitchen crew is left to clean.
Mhm.
And I think that's a disservice to these people who have spent hours and days and weeks planning a feast. And in Atenveldt, we don't have as many feasts as we had up north, which is okay. We're not a feasting culture as much.
When up north, it's cold for 9 months out of the year. Feasts are great.
Feasts happen a lot.
They
Yeah.
happen indoors.
But it's that I think we need to bring that back and have, some of, our peers kind of start that tradition and maybe have some dish tubs in their trunks to bring out to help and go through and do things. Because basically you would put in a line, you'd hand in your stuff, they'd go down the line and wash it, and you'd pick it up at the end. It was this whole assembly line to go through.
That's
And then they'd go
awesome.
to the kitchen and clean. And I think it's a tradition up there. And I think it actually comes back down to the Midwestern thing of, if you're there at a party, you help clean up.
Mhm.
And most SCA people do help pick up at an end of a party, at least get the glasses put away and the trash taken out and all of that, leave the site cleaner than you found it. But I think we can take that a step further to help our own people to make cleaning up an event, especially a feast at the end of the night, so much easier.
I like that.
I don't know that I have a tradition that I would necessarily bring back. I think traditions evolve over time. I think things change, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I can't think of any one specific thing that I would say that we need to bring that back. The one thing I would say is I think we need to remember, especially when it comes to our big events like Estrella. A lot of the times, Estrella, we get all wrapped up in what we do because it's a lot of work. I mean, we go to an event like Estrella, we bring our household out, we set it all up, and we get wrapped up in our own thing. And believe me, as guilty as anybody on this. And we forget that the vast majority of the folks who are there just to have a good time and hang out with their friends.
Mhm.
They don't really care about our drama, and they really shouldn't. So if I had a tradition, if you want a word for it, welcome all these regular folks into your camp, host them, make sure they have a good time, visit them. Don't look down on them just because they're camping in a nylon tent. It doesn't matter. They're there to have a good time, just like the rest of us.
Yeah.
We're choosing to do things slightly differently. That's a choice, not a requirement. We need
Absolutely.
everybody to come have a good time.
Well, I think sometimes people forget that that's where you started.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
everybody, or not with a tent in my case.
Yeah.
Another one that I point out to a lot of people is a lot of people complain when the parties get too loud at Astray and other places. I'm not a big party person. I freely admit it. I like things quieter. On the other hand, parties are an essential part of the SCA environment.
Yeah.
I've told the Lands Connects this. I've gone to their parties a few times. Like Malayas and I have talked. Lands Connect parties are not my thing. I don't really enjoy them. I am in the minority, and I need to remember that. There are a vast number of people who absolutely love going to them, and they have a great time there. They are an integral part of what we do in providing that kind of a release for a lot of people, that ability to get together and hang out. And if you complain about them, you're going to lose a lot of those people. And that would be a tragedy for us. It would really be a loss.
You know, Lance Connects, the most period thing we have, because they drink a lot, they gamble a lot, they go fight a lot, they rabble rouse. Oh, and they gamble a lot. Just like they would have in period.
Just like
mercenaries are.
Yeah.
And like, but I know that if I call on them and need help for something, they're going to be right there.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and honestly, the parties are what keep the younger crowd, and then they grow into what we are now.
Absolutely.
Oh, I still go down to the schnapps party. I go down, have a drink, hang out, say hi to everybody, and then come back home.
Same.
Go visit, and then come home.
But for me, that I guess the tradition of welcoming in everybody new and not just saying, hey, welcome, but making sure that there are things there that they want to do and that those things are okay.
Yeah.
And that we're not going to complain about a party because it gets a little loud, or complain about everybody, off in overflow camping in nylon tents.
Yeah.
Those are not things to complain about.
No.
Those are things to encourage because they get more people in. Without that, you don't get everybody else in period pavilions. It doesn't work that way.
No, because I mean, usually the natural progression is you come in, you go as cheap as you can, and you start to see those other people that aren't pressuring you, but you see what they have, and you start to want that, and then you work your way to it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
But if those people are looking down their nose at you, and
Then
Why
you don't
would you
want
want to be that?
you don't want to be them.
And I would encourage everybody to remember that.
Mhm.
Offer a helping hand. Don't look down at them.
So, do you have a favorite Atenveldt tradition?
This one's gonna sound a little weird to some folks. So we come from North Shield, and you get crowned in North Shield like you do in most kingdoms. So seeing a king crown himself was super, super weird when it happened. I mean, just not the way things are ever done, almost anywhere else, really. But that tradition has really grown on me a tremendous amount. I know even some of the older folks who started Atenveldt are like, yeah, we probably should have gotten rid of that. I'm not so sure of that. I like the fact that it's very different, that you went out and you won a crown for your lady, and you crown yourself and
Your
you crown
consort.
her. Your consort. My lady in this case, but you are correct. Your consort. Things to remember for the future.
For now, too.
Well, future meaning past this point in time.
Okay.
But that crowning of yourself, I think, really defines a big part of our kingdom culture.
Mhm.
It doesn't define a bad thing as far as I've been able to tell. It just says, hey, this is Atenveldt. We crown ourselves here. We won the tournament. We crown ourselves and our consort. That's how we do things. We took the crown. We didn't get given it. It wasn't arbitrary. It wasn't voted on. It's part of who we are. And I've really come to appreciate that a tremendous amount.
Well, and even the oath that you, as the outgoing crown, the oath that you accept from the incoming crown, which releases you to let go of the crown.
Yep.
And that's why, I've always been like, yeah, that won't ever be cut out of the ceremony when I'm handing the hat off, because I spoke those words.
That is a big part of it.
I'm still trying to think of Aten specific things. And part of it's I haven't been to other kingdoms for certain events like Crown. Like I've only been to Atenveldt for Crown. I've been to a Coronet tournament in North Shield, so that was very different because there you won the tournament. The next day you stepped up as heirs. Yeah, so you had to come prepared to be prince and princess for a year. And it was just crazy to me to think that. But here, and I don't know how they do it in other kingdoms, but I really like when the Ladies of the Rose stand with the consorts, because it's a buffer.
Yeah.
It is if you've ever stood in a finals, the ladies, and well, Lords of the Rose too in other kingdoms, but Ladies of the Rose stand there with the consorts and are a buffer. Yeah, you might not have your best friend with you, but they don't know what you're going through at that point.
Mhm.
Everyone behind you and around you has been in your shoes.
Yep.
And knows what's happening, because it's such a bizarre experience.
Mhm.
But you have Nichelle handing you a drink. You
Yeah.
have a couple of the ladies holding onto shoulders or holding onto hands or whispering, breathe.
Rubbing your back.
Rubbing your back, making
Mhm.
sure you've got shade, making sure you're drinking water or drinking something.
Yep.
It is, I don't know if it's just an Aten tradition, but
I don't think so.
it is such an important thing that, and then we also have some of the ladies of the Rose hold on to the heirs' hats at that same time. So the weight of that responsibility is standing there with the consorts.
Mhm.
And I think that's just tremendous. And I have a photograph I posted for on Instagram for the 30 days of SCA. And it was I have a photograph of Cecilia the moment Walrick won. And she has and Nikki's right next to her, jumping up and down, and everyone's just in the background, woo! And that moment to see, I don't get to see that expression anymore, and that's okay. But it's so important for the ladies to be there and to basically hold that consort and also have that bubble, because there's that time of, it's just happened, the marshals call it, and there's that liminal space that you have to give them time. And you don't realize it's time. It goes so quick when you're there and about to get that hat, but it's so important for the Ladies of the Rose to be that buffer to make sure they don't get mobbed by people and all of that, because there's ceremony that has to happen before the celebration can begin.
Yep.
In earnest. And I just think that's tremendous. And for anyone who gets to do that, and I'm very happy that we call in all of the Ladies of the Rose or the flowers from other kingdoms when that happens, so they can be part of our tradition. I remember when Viscountess Wander's like, I get to come? And I'm like, yes, ma'am, you've been here and you've done this. Come on. And we're welcoming, and we don't get together as often as we probably should, but we're there in that moment. And I just love that part.
I agree. So what is your favorite event?
So my favorite event doesn't exist anymore. I loved Southern Crusades when it was at the Winkleman site. And honestly, I loved it for a lot of the reasons other people did not like it. I loved the fact that it was primitive. I loved the fact that there were not a lot of amenities there. I loved camping down by the river and the trees. Literally, for me, the only thing that was missing was a bit of green grass. That would have made it perfect. I love the fact that we got a fire in the ground, that I have so many stories from there. That is, for me, one of the most magical events that Atenveldt has had. It didn't require a tremendous amount of work on my part, like Estrella typically does. Well, no, it was just a smaller deal all the way around. There wasn't as much pressure. You go, you set up, you have a good time, you go fight or do other things in the day, you come back, you come back in the evening, you sit around a fire that you've built up big in the fire pit, and you have a great time with your friends. You get to tell funny stories years later, like, hey, we had a skunk in our tent.
Oh,
It was fine. No, nothing went wrong.
No.
It finally dug its way out. We shooed it out, talked it away from the tent.
Tense
Literally
moment, though.
that was in our tent one day, one night.
One night.
The other one is the bobcat who was across the river from us, just that the little stream, sitting on the sandbar when Blossom came by with her little dog, and the bobcat looked up like, "Hey, you walk away, I'll totally take care of that for you."
Phelan's tent getting rammed by a cow.
Yeah, just random stuff. Like, again, I liked the fighting there. I like the fact that one of the early years out there when the stream was running, Sean turned to us and said, "Hey, when the marshals yell lay on, we're going to charge across the river onto that sandbar and hold the sandbar."
Yep.
And we looked at him and somebody asked, "Did you tell the marshals about this?"
No.
No.
Why would I do that?
Way better to ask
The
for
marshals wrote us
forgiveness.
the rules we couldn't fight across the river.
It was awesome though.
Oh, yeah, no. I remember hobbling around on my bad knee with using an axe as a crutch
I remember that.
when I was warlord.
Yep. So for me, that event was kind of all of the best things in Atenveldt rolled into one nice tidy bundle for me. It was camping, it was crafting, it was classes, it was fighting. It was a campsite. I could have a fire in the ground, which coming from up north is the way you do things. Fire pits were very weird when I moved down here. I'm like, this is okay. I guess that's what we do now. I've gotten used to it over the years, but it's just one of those things. I loved that event a tremendous amount. I hope someday we'll see something like that come back. Not exactly, obviously, but some event, whether it's down here, up north, wherever, that kind of rolls into the same place as that one had.
Yeah, agreed.
How about you, dear?
I really miss Southern, but I think for me, it's always been a lot of the smaller events. I really like going up to Windale for their Yule.
Mhm.
I liked when we had Masked Rebel and Weanutu. I like almost all the Masked Rebels we had, or the Mons' Yule. I think now, because it's still going, is the Mons Yule that we have, especially when they have it in Elgin. I love that hall. The first time we went, I was like, oh, this is like a medieval hall because it's got the wood beams and the fireplace and good food and fun and games. And it's just, that's always been a nice event. It's small, but again, it's more homey to me because we grew up, and even though I've been here 20 years now, it's still, I like the smaller, more intimate events. It's not so overwhelming. I think that's, if people haven't gone to a lot of smaller events and seen the intimacy that we can have as a group and just hang out with people you may not have normally talked to, I think that's the fun, because it's the people that you get to go with. But against the ambiance, that hall is just beautiful for what that event does. The candlelight, and it's just nice. And I think I really do like those. I like feasts when I can eat them. And that one just has a lot of special memories for me, especially with that location.
So do you have a favorite out of kingdom event, and why?
I would pick Battlemore.
Mm.
I've not gone every year, but the years I've gone, Battlemore reminded me of being in the SCA for the first time again.
Yeah.
And I don't even know why. I can't put a finger on exactly what it was about that event, but it was like I was going to a good-sized event for the first time again. All the magic, all the little things that I used to look for were there. It was just super enjoyable for me. Again, it was like being in the SCA new again in a really good way. It brought back a lot of the magic that I experienced early on in the SCA, and I've really enjoyed the times I've gone. It's just fun. Everybody's super nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like Pensic. I can go take classes during the day, go fight, go shopping, all in the same day. Because the fighting only happens for like an hour or so in the day. You can get a shower, you can take classes beforehand, you can just hang out and sleep in, go shopping, go hang out, go to the bog at the night, go party, go meandering around. I mean, there's just so much to do and so much to see. I love it. It's exhausting. I think it's got the just some of the coolest things, and it's not just SCA people that are there,
Mhm.
because the ambiance when you get down to the bog and you see all the encampments and you see, you know, the houses that are built up on the Serengeti.
Mm.
It's just everyone makes their attempts, and the big gates for the kingdoms, and it's just really neat. And I think everyone should make it to SCA Mecca once in their life and make the most of it and be exhausted and take another week off when you get home because you're going to be tired. We took Benny this last time we went, and he had a heck of a good time getting to see things, do stuff,
Do archery.
do archery, held the my shield walking into court for opening ceremonies because he hadn't quite made it in yet. So I think it's a cool event you can bring your kids to, because there's things for them to go do and have a good time with. And then the evenings they can stay home
Because they'll be tired.
because they'll be tired. He was happy to hang out in the hammock and read in the evenings because he's like, I'm done. I walked too much. And it was just really, I really enjoy that because I get to see people from all over the world. I only get to see at Pennsic, except for, well, now I've gotten to see them other places now, but it's just, it's a lot of camaraderie, and the Atenveldt encampment's always so much fun. We
Yeah.
make the most of our little plot of land and, you know, our not normal setups, and just have a good time. We really do.
The opening ceremonies were, I remember they were terrifying as crowd.
The first time, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so the best part is we're standing up there and it was taking forever before it like got rolling, and like because the hosting crowns weren't in, it hadn't processed in yet. They come in and they did their spiel, and then Havek was king of the West, and so then it was his turn to speak. And while he was being super eloquent like he is, I realized that I'm next.
Never want to follow her back.
Because by precedence, we were going to be next. I was like, this is terrible because I have no idea what I'm going to say. It's not going to be as wordy as that guy.
Oh,
I don't even remember what I said. I can't even remember.
I can remember Athenric was standing next to me, and because I was very brief, he was like, "Oh my God, thank you."
oh.
So to get to the really heavy questions, I'm actually going to mix it up a little bit and ask you, what do you consider to be the definition of peer-like qualities?
You have a responsibility to treat everyone well, but at the same time, you have a responsibility to tell people the truth, which is a very fine line to cut. You can't tolerate terrible behavior from others just to be polite.
Mm.
You also have a responsibility to tell the crown your opinion on things, not just a right, a responsibility, and generally in private, if you're smart about things. Not everybody is, but you should.
Yeah.
So for me, that's the bigger half of the peer-like qualities. Be able to treat everyone well, responsibly, treat them like people, treat them like you would want to be treated. I know a lot of people say that, but it's true. But at the same time, don't tolerate a lot of poor behavior. Do your best to correct it, gently at first and more forcefully if required. The other half of it is try and embody what you're a peer of. If you're a fighter and you're a knight, be good at it. Train people, teach people. Try to embody the best parts of being a warrior. If you're an artist, a Laurel, again, train people, teach people, show your craft. Try and inspire others to do the things that either you do or do the best they can do. That goes for any peerage. Try and inspire others to do the things you do and do the best they can at them, if that is their goal. To me, that's kind of the balance of your peer-like qualities. That's what it means to be a peer. It's a responsibility. It's not a final award. It's not an achievement that you get and call a day. It's not how do I phrase it? It's not a title that comes with no responsibility. It's a title that comes with a lot of responsibility, and it should. I mean, we're supposed to look up to our peers. I know when I was not a peer, I looked up to peers. That's what you're supposed to do. They're supposed to help you and guide you and train you and treat you decently. And for the most part, most of them do. And that's what really makes the peerage worthwhile, is most of the people in it really do their best to live up to it, which I appreciate a tremendous amount. As my wife said, you're going to be somebody's first peer.
Yeah.
Everybody had a first peer of some sort. Hopefully the interaction was good. I know it isn't always,
Yeah.
but hopefully it will be. Try and make it as good as you can for people.
So there is that quote of you'll see it and you know it, with relation to, I'm gonna say porn. You know it if you see it, right?
Mhm.
Well, you know it when you see somebody doing peer-like behavior. You can say, oh, that person's a knight. Well, then you might find out they're not a knight, and you can go, huh, okay. You can see people on the right path. One of the things that got given to me during my vigil for Laurel was on a napkin written by Master Johannes, and it says simply, a laurel looks a lot like a toilet seat. Don't rest your butt on your laurels, basically.
That's not the end. You best keep going.
Yeah, and we you don't want to be a disappear. It's the
Johannes, yeah.
Yeah, it's Johannes. And so everyone always thinks in martial arts that the black belt's the end all be all. It's not. A black belt just means you have learned enough now to be a really good student. And that's really what a peerage is. You've learned enough to excel to now really
Get good at
learn
what you're doing.
and get good. You got all these skill sets behind you that all build up and all stack and do different things, whether it's in martial arts, whether it's in service, whether it's in arts and sciences. Everything stacks. And it all goes forward to the person you're going to be after that and what you're going to attain to. There's always a bar. It just keeps getting farther and you keep pushing it.
Yep.
And it's the be polite. Again, like I said, if you do something wrong, own up to it. You really got to be honest. You got to own up to it. Call people on their behavior. And one of the things that, as a peer, if you give your words to the crown, you've given them your opinion. You've given them guidance. It is not up to you as the peer to make them follow that guidance. You've given what you can. You can maybe judge and help, but you can't force the crown in a decision or other peers in a decision. You just have to give your advice. And hopefully they take it. If they don't be backstabby about it. Don't do the I told you so dance. Even though you really want to have it in your own bedroom at home in front of your mirror and then be done with it. But you have to realize this is a job. With great power comes great responsibility.
Go Spider-Man.
Right. And you know peers when you see them, you know peers who aren't behaving greatly. Help others see their mistakes. I think as we're going forward as a society, and I'm talking outside of the SCA world, there are a lot of decisions that we have to be making as a society to move forward and be inclusive. There are ways to change the way that you talk and the way that you speak, in the way that you put people in boxes. Those boxes don't need to be there. And that's things that you have to work on all the time. Everybody does. You got to unlearn those habits that we've all been unfortunately raised with, a lot of us. It is a different world out there. We got to change it. And us who are peers need to lead that charge, need to show the proper way to be, the proper way to react, and the way to be inclusive with all walks of life, all genders, all everyone of race, color, creed, etc. Because we can all have a good time and drink and eat at the same table. And we want to have that hospitality and do that. And we got to lead it.
Yeah, I think sadly can be tough to police our own.
Yeah.
And we should. I mean, you'd think we'd be great at it, but those are tough conversations to have.
And
But you're right.
a lot of
I'm a big fan of leaning into somebody's ear and go, was that peer like?
Again, gently at first.
Yeah.
Right.
Hey, take your friend aside. That was kind of a racist and not inclusive comment. Can you change that? And maybe go to apologize to that person. Don't be a douche.
Yeah.
You know, it's Will Wheaton's thing of don't be a dick, right? You got to do that. Our rule number 1 is don't look like ass. Personage, how you go. Rule number 2 is don't make your peers, lowercase p and capital P, the crown, your kingdom, your local group, don't make them look like ass. Let's show everybody we're all inclusive in doing that. And that's rule number 1 and rule number 2. Call rule number 3, don't be that guy, out on their behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to do, but we gotta do it.
Yep.
Well, we have really enjoyed talking with you. So much so that we've gone way over, but I'm okay with it.
Sorry about that. It's going to be a long.
Oh, no, don't be.
No, it's
It
awesome.
was a great conversation and I'm sure people will enjoy hearing it.
It's
But
been great. It's
was
been a
there
lot of
any,
fun, you guys?
Yeah.
was there any stories you wanted to grace the populace with before we go? Or it's okay if you
For the
don't.
moment, I'm good.
Okay. Just thinking.
I don't know. I should probably tell the other half of the Osis story.
You're cool.
So I meet Osis the king, and I had been basically, I had met Ivan at a year before at an event. They found out I was just 17 that day, and the college kids went,
And noped right out. Yep, that
yeah,
there.
yeah. I ended up going to the same college he went to, and I'm a sassy frosh, and I decided that I was going to walk into the upperclassmen dorm and go see what that was all about with one of my friends. And we see this guy in an anime t-shirt. I'm like, hey dude, can we see your like dorm room? We don't know what these ones look like. They're supposed to look really much better than the freshman dorm. They didn't really,
Not
but
really.
they had cable TV. And he's like, sure, I don't think my roommate will mind. And we walk up the stairs to room 315, and there's Mel in this dilapidated armchair that should have been thrown out like 3 years ago.
It had been.
And I was like, hey, I remember you from Rum and from Armageddon. And he's like, hey, yeah. I'm like, hey, are you going to Armageddon? And he's like, yeah, when is it? I'm like, it's Friday.
Awesome.
This is Tuesday. And I go, well, can I get a ride? This is 500 miles away. Now, I could have borrowed my stepbrother's car and gone myself, but I was like, hey, if I can get a ride, that'll be just easier for me, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I get a ride with all these college guys. They decide to go out in the woods. They went off on one of the hiking trails and made a little fire and drank some booze and hung out. And I'm, at the fire, meet the king, talk to my friends. At the South Dakota School of Mines, when you're a frosh, that is before homecoming, all the freshmen are called frosh, and we wear these stupid little beanie hats. I had put some sparkly lame around mine and ribbons down the back, very medieval looking, right? So I'm wearing this with my, not very. But, Ivan and the buddies are all seniors, and they come back to where everyone's having a party, and all of a sudden from across the way, I hear, Frosh, sing the beanie song.
Because it's what you do.
Yeah, because the seniors can make the freshmen do things. It's not hazing, it is actually really tradition. And so you get to sing this song. And it's based off of, I'm not sure who wrote it originally. And it's silly. And it ends up with, yes, sir, I love my beanie hat. Yes, ma'am, I love my beanie hat. Well, I turned it to, yes, Your Majesty, I love my beanie hat. Yes, milady, I love my beanie hat, to everybody, and bowed and got, yay. And that is not at all how the college kids thought that was going to go. Compared to me, and everybody is drunk as a skunk and thought this was hilarious, and it was a really good time. What we also didn't know is that the boys decided that they were gonna have Dan date me because he was the cute guy. So I dated his best friend for like 4 or 5 months before it was finally like, Dan's playing video games in another building I can't go into, and I hung out with him, and then hey, it's been 25 years later, we've been together. So
Things worked out.
things worked out.
Nice.
But
Clearly.
yeah. But I think it's a fun story, and everybody just thinks it's hilarious. And I still have my beanie hat, and it still has the gold lame and ribbons on it.
Parts of college you keep.
Yep.
You should wear it to coronation.
Oh God, that'd be hilarious.
I will have to find it. It's with my senior hat, because we have the old mining caps with the leather piece in the front that you can attach a lantern to.
Because the school we went to was School of Mines and Technology. It's a mining,
Okay.
Morehouse Mining Engineering College.
Yep. And it's all mining and science. There's nothing else.
You don't want to be a scientist or an engineer, you don't go there.
And
That's-
it's, guy to girl ratio 10-1, so the odds are good, but the goods are on. So
Nice. So that's been my new thing. Gunnar had posted a picture from his old school, like giant belt buckle. It was like this big.
oh yeah.
And so when we did the investiture for Granite Mountain, I asked him to be my herald and then told him he had to wear that belt.
That thing's ridiculous. He was like, yes, Your Majesty.
Oh God.
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
It's been a lot
Well,
of
we
fun.
should probably close this
Yeah.
for the night.
Your Majesty.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you both.
We miss you and love you, and we'll see you soon. Soon.
Yes.